I think about Detroit, I'm talking about the neighborhoods. I'm talking about Deep West, Deep East, Northwest, Southwest. There's experiences that come from those communities that are very important to understanding the experiences of all Detroiters.
There's so many good artists in Detroit. Everybody is not going to become nationally known, but when you go, you just hear really wonderful music.
We've got the beat of the nation here in Detroit, because here we have people that work together of all races, of all religions, who in this cosmopolitan area have found a way to solve our common problems. That is the lesson of Detroit.
Welcome back to the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham. And when you think of the tech world, our minds will most likely go in different directions. Some may be more geared to think about tech in automotives or tech in medicine. But what about tech and art? In what ways do the two converge? And who are some of the most important contributors to this work? Those are some questions a new exhibit is trying to answer. The Museum of Contemporary Art Detroit is unveiling Code Switch, Distributing Blackness and Reprogramming Internet Art. The presentation is in collaboration with The Kitchen, a New York-based artist-driven collective. The Kitchen introduced the first iteration of Code Switch in fall of 2024 to highlight the contributions of Black creative technologists of Harlem during the 1960s to the 1990s, and a little before that, too. Opening at MOCAD on May 2nd, Code Switch will include artists from across the country and highlight Detroit's tech contributions as well. Joining us now to talk more about Code Switch, Distributing Blackness, Reprogramming Internet Art is Artistic Director, Co-Curator, and Co-Director of MOCAD, Jova Lynn. Jova, welcome to the Metro.
Hey, Tia. Thanks for having me.
Of
Good to be here again.
Of course. Love having you all here. You're just across the street, so it's great to bring you over. But there will be over 40 artists represented in the exhibit with the focus of highlighting Black contributions to new media and experimental art. Can you describe what that looks like for us? What is new media and experimental art when we're talking about it in this way?
Yeah, so I think that's a question that Code Switch actually tries to answer through the exhibition, right? So new media art or technology, I think, often walks this fine line where you think it's one thing, but it's really another, right? So in this exhibition, we actually have a very wide variety of works. We have sculpture, we have painting, and then we have video, we have objects that are created using media technology. We have things that question what is technology in general. And so this is all, as you said, through the lens of Black artists. When you come into MOCAD, this show is one of two shows actually that's up. But you walk right in and you walk into this question of what is technology. Oftentimes Black culture is referred to in internet culture, right? So you have the memes of Tyra Banks screaming, which is also depicted in a painting at the museum. You have this sort of gifs of old G guy with the fur coat walking around snatching people's purses. You have all these cultural references to our folks and our people. And this sort of exhibition puts all that on display while historically contextualizing them. So one of the artists, for example, who's in the show is an artist who's also mostly known for being a writer, Sister Souljah. You might be familiar with her work. But she's also a photographer, a pretty well-known photographer. And we have a large-scale work of her that sort of combines internet technology, history specifically related to Blackness, creating another identity through her practice as a writer while still maintaining her practice as a photographer, all these things. So really, this show is about the intersection of art and technology and the way that Black cultural iconography, these people who we celebrated as young folks coming up, have contributed to the internet in general.
And my mind has gone into so many different directions with just you explaining and setting that up for us. But Jova, I think about, just like you said, technology and what it actually means. Mm-hmm. And I thought, as I was doing research and understanding what the Kitchen had done originally, taking a look back and looking back at what they thought technology was in the 60s and a little bit before then, and as technology grew, how that term changed and evolved. So I would love to go back for just a little bit, if you can, and talk about some of those early technologies that we saw that were created out of from the Black lens.
Yeah. So first, before I sort of get more into it, I want to shout out to my beloved colleagues at the kitchen, specifically Legacy Russell, who is an amazing writer, brilliant curator, thinker. For those of you who don't know their work, please check out the book Black Meme, Glitch Feminism. These are two texts that really have sort of shaped this contemporary landscape when it comes to Black contribution to digital art. And so Legacy sort of is the brainchild of this series, which changes. And of course, the last domain is here in Detroit. But the first two domains that you're talking about were presented at the Schomburg, which is an amazing art history library that's located in New York City. One of the largest collections, archives of Black life in America, period, is at the Schomburg. And so for the first iteration, you had various artists, including people who might not be known as artists, like W.E.B. Du Bois. And so Du Bois, he had this constellation of these beautiful charts and graphs, basically the collection of data about Black life at the time. And so all of this came about in like the 1800s, right? Before you had the computer or the like software that you could use to access the internet superhighway. But it was a collection of data that impacted and sort of told this trajectory and history of Black life. And when you see those works, which are also, we created a resource library for this exhibition, and so we have some of the depictions of these, they really do look like paintings or illustrations, right? And we have to remember that the internet is a series of numbers. There's visuals that go with it, but really it is a series of numbers that tell a story, right? That like give us access to this other world. So from that perspective, looking at something that was created way before a computer existed, like this is sort of charting the history of Blackness, period, right? And like him being a pioneer in that. And so that first iteration included so many artists who I adore, who really sort of were telling these stories through these different sort of visualizations. And so this iteration is the contemporary iteration. It's the iteration from 1990 until now. And so you have a mixture of artists. You have artists like Julie Moretu, who is not necessarily known for engaging with internet technology art, but whose practice is deeply rooted in this sort of storytelling, this alternative storytelling. You have Howardina Pindell. We're showing a video of hers, largely known as a painter, but this really beautiful video that sort of tells the history of rebellion through the lens of black ripping found footage from various journalist sites, and sort of talking about the way our freedom is inextricably connected to fighting for revolution, right? And so these like this amazing tale from W.E.B. Du Bois now to where we are with artists like Howardina, Julie, all these other contemporary artists from Detroit is like, this is the historical arc of what is possible with technology.
You know, just thinking about W.E.B. Du Bois and what you're explaining or describing about what he had on that page or had on those pages, and thinking about code and the way coding works, and just my mind is just thinking to myself, he literally had the language to the other world that he was trying to explain in the 1800s, which is crazy to even think about. So my brain is just like on fire. That's why I'm just like looking at it like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. But he was a famous Black author and a sociologist and a thought leader. He was so many other things. To your point, people don't really know that he's an artist in that way. So can you talk just a little bit about the art that he was able to produce? Did he actually produce things that he considered art?
I would not say that he produced things that he considered art, because I think what art means has changed over the years, right? Like, I think that that's the role that contemporary art plays in the world, is recontextualizing these things that might not be thought of as art through concept, through delivery. And so I think when Legacy had this brilliant idea to bring him into the fold, I think that's creating a new chapter in art history, right? And that's the role that the Kitchen has in New York, and that's a role that MOCAD has here in Detroit. And with this partnership, putting together this exhibition is really about elevating the both and the in-between, right? Which is where data, which is where internet, you know, we know these things, or we're taught of these things as being fact. And there's a liminal space actually in between all these things, right? And there's experience that impacts all these things, and that sort of guides us to pushing forward with a new pathway for understanding these things. And I think that's a part of what the show is trying to do, is bring all those things together, because I think that's the important part of art, right? Is questioning, learning new things.
asking questions, and, thinking about the other goal of Code Switch. There's so many goals with Code Switch and so many things that you all are trying to accomplish with the exhibit. But Code Switch at MOCAD, it is expanding on the idea of Black contributions in the tech space, of course. But let's talk about one of Detroit's biggest exports from creative technologists like Juan Atkins, or some of the other folks who were in the basement of Belleville. It's just like, I think about some of the things that they were able to create, and I just really wanted to hit on to that. So can we talk a little bit about the importance of why techno is such an important highlight, especially as part of the conversation that we're having right now?
Totally. I mean, techno is Detroit, right? Techno is the sound of Detroit. It is pure Detroit. There's so many people who are a part of shaping the legacy and history of techno. And I think looking at sort of where technology and techno intersect. Sorry, well, two big words. Where techno and technology intersect, it's like you can't have one without the other, right? You need the sounds of electronics. You need that sort of like escalade into this beautiful crescendo of hard techno-based sound with rhythm and blues, right? One can't exist without the other. And I think I would feel sad about myself if I didn't mention the impact of rhythm and blues in building technology. So when we are looking at the show and we're looking at techno, we're also looking at Motown sound too. We're looking at also the women who helped shape both of those sound technologies and what that meant in terms of the world. You think about techno being captured through a vinyl record. The fact that vinyl is just pressed plastic basically is wild to me.
I know.
It's just like, and so bringing the show here to Detroit, the Third Domain, that is about the references to technology, to techno. Part of the conversations we've been having across institutions is also labor organizing, thinking about the contributions of Jimmy Boggs, for example, and thinking about automation and automative technology and what that means also in terms of these sounds that we're hearing. And so in the exhibition, there are two local artists who I adore, Venus Locke, also known as Vanessa Reynolds, and Wesley Taylor. And they are both artists who also work with sound, also work with these technologies, who are deeply impacted by the rhythm of Detroit. And so bringing them into this conversation, bringing the conversation here to Detroit, which is an undeniable hub of technology, has been such a pleasure.
It's an undeniable hub. But right after this conversation, we're going to talk about how some of the things that you all are talking about and describing with the Code Switch exhibit happening at MOCAD, we're going to have Black Tech Saturdays to talk about their manifestation of it here in the city and how it actually is breathing and thriving here. So this is a great way to segue to Black Tech Saturdays in a moment, but we still want to stick with you right now and just talk a little bit more once again about that technology that was created and how those spaces are carved out. I think about techno breathing and living and coming into fruition because there was a new pathway that was carved out with this technology. Can you talk about how, as technology changed, Black people who were not necessarily included within these changes and these changing spaces found ways to carve out their paths to create new technologies?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Black folks have always done, right? Like, we've always been people who will carve out space and try to sort of make a platform for ourselves despite exclusion, inclusion. And so when we look at the sort of history of the internet, we think a lot about its primary function honestly being associated with military, right? And like ways to collect data and keep people safe, all these things. And so when we think about the way the internet has evolved, so now I literally walk around with a computer in my hand every day. And that's a really wild thing, right? From like these mega computers to this now thing that I can carry with me. And so I think something that the show really accomplishes is talking about technology as more than just the screen or just the computer you have in your purse.
Yeah.
And so we're also thinking about the body and the connection to the body. So thinking about, for example, avatars, right? Like you create this sort of persona that lives on the internet, but also is a physical manifestation of you in real form. And those like parallels and in-betweens of that. I also feel like the internet is a place where Black folks with other marginalized identity have the ability to get free and truly express themselves. So like LGBTQ folks, disabled folks, folks who who are of different education levels, different economic access. And so sort of leveling the playing field, using the internet as a tool to do so, to create creative expression. I think there's a lot of new media artists in Detroit. I will say so many more than we could include in this exhibition. And I think MOCAD, as a contemporary art institution, we're going to keep showing media artists and elevating our folks. And so as we continue to do that, we'll be able to uplift more of these histories, right? More of the contributions that Black women specifically have had in the internet.
Yes. I'm Tia Graham, and you're listening to The Metro on WDET. We're learning more about Code Switch, distributing Blackness, reprogramming internet art, a new exhibit headed to MOCAD May 2nd. Our guest is artistic director, co-director of MOCAD, and the co-curator of Code Switch, Jova Lynn. Now, Jova, I do want to talk about, you were just hitting on it, and it's a perfect segue, because I do want to talk about one of the reasons the exhibit has this title is due to Andre Brock's groundbreaking text, Distributed Blackness, African American Cyber Cultures. And for me, when I think about that book and I think about the title and what we were just talking about, I think about Black Twitter, for example, or the Black spaces that are created within the internet spaces. I remember my sister asking me, what's Black Twitter? And I thought to myself, I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to get to the root of that question, because it's not really a place. Is something that kind of births itself. So I want to talk about the importance, because you were just hitting on it, but the importance of those spaces one more time, because I didn't even know that I was a part of the until you look at your timeline or your social media and you're like, oh, I get it now. So can we just talk about that and explain that to folks for just a little bit if they aren't understanding what it is?
No, that's totally cool. I mean, I will say, like, all credit due to Legacy, whose scholarship is really rooted in this work and sort of looking at these entanglements. And I have to say, they're writing some of my favorite writing around this. And, sometimes we talk about this sort of subculture of that, like, so a part of code switching, right, is when we switch from one cultural lexicon to another. And that also, of course, is a funny jab at like code switch, code internet. But it is also about moving through these parallel worlds, right? And like speaking different languages, either in person or, like you said, on the internet. So maybe Black Twitter or Black TikTok, Black Talk as they call it, is a really good example. And I think it is that thing that you actually mentioned earlier, which is Black folks carving out space in predominantly non-Black spaces to claim something, to have conversation, to express joy, to express liberation, to just create a new sort of way of engaging with each other, which is foundational to how our communities have always existed, right? We're just taking up other space now on the internet in this digital realm. And I think that that's so important when we think about that both and nature of code switching, right? It's like being of and next to at the same time. And so carving out that space, I think, has everything to do with the phenomena of these things. Because when you see that Tyra Banks meme, right?
We were all rooting for you.
We were all rooting for you. It has so many different meanings for so many cultures and so many different people. Yeah. And I think the way that just sort of went viral is a fantastic example of how Black culture moves the internet and moves our communities, especially from a place of comedy and joy, which is so needed.
I mean, it happens so regularly within our own community when we have these type of situations that happen, and we turn something that could be tragic or something that could be painful to others into something that is a joyous moment.
Exactly.
And for those who aren't aware about the Tyra Banks meme, it is from America's Next Top Model. She had a model on there who was a contestant who they were all rooting for. They all wanted Tiffany to win, and Tiffany didn't want to win. She didn't want to win. She was ready to go home, and Tyra sent her home by screaming, "We were rooting for you." And it just has stuck. It's been about 15, 20 years now, and it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still with us every single day. So, Jova, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, but I think like the fact that it's still around and it's still relevant somehow, just like how Blackness has always been around, Blackness has always been relevant. And that's also part of the crux of this show.
Yes.
And we will forever be, you know?
Before I let you go, because we're down to the end here, I do want you to just talk one more time about Code Switch, the importance of it, and just a little bit about, the length, how long it's going to be at MOCAD.
Yeah.
Give us the rundown.
Great. So Code Switch, is a recap, is a collaboration between MOCAD and The Kitchen, which is a New York City hub for avant-garde experimental art. It was an art collective that actually grew into now a very established institution, which is incredible. And so this exhibition is a new iteration of Code Switch. It is a moment in time from 1990 up until now that sort of goes over histories, legacies, different ways very different artists have impacted the internet, new media, and sort of digital culture. It has been organized in collaboration, brainchild of Legacy Russell, working with an amazing team that includes Angelique Santiago and Isabella Nemo, and just truly a collaboration between New York and Detroit. It highlights local, international, and nationally known artists, and it recontextualizes things for folks to really think about what is this thing called technology and how does Blackness have everything to do with it.
That, Jova,
May 2nd.
I was going to say, that's Jova Lynn, man. But before I do really let you go, we got this music coming up now, but I do want to say Soulja Boy and his contributions to the internet. Is that something we can say he actually helped?
I can say he actually did.
Okay.
There we go.
I stand on that too. I really do. Jova Lynn is the artistic director and co-director of MOCAD. Code Switch, Distributing Blackness, Reprogramming Internet Art, is opening up May 2nd, and it runs through August 10th at MOCAD. Jova Lynn, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
And I hope folks come through 6 to 8.
Yes. Coming up, there are Black technologists right here in Detroit who are changing the landscape of innovation. We'll talk with one of them coming up next. We'll be right back on the Metro. You all stay right there. Welcome back to the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham. And technology, or the tech field, it is an ever-expanding field, especially as more industries adopt automation, robotics, AI, just to name a few, which means the need for skilled workers will continue to climb. And that's where Black Tech Saturdays comes in. Created by Johnny and Alexa Turnage, is trying to foster the trend. Black Tech Saturday has a goal of promoting diversity and inclusion in the technology industry while also promoting creativity. Johnny Turnage is the co-founder and creator of Black Tech Saturdays. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro again.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So Black Tech Saturdays, it is a manifestation of one of the pillars of what we were talking about with MOCAD, the exhibit Code Switch. It is exactly what Black technologists have wanted to see for a while, a cohort of Black folks within the tech industry. So talk about the space you and Alexa have created in Detroit's tech ecosystem and beyond.
Yes, this is really special. Tomorrow actually makes 2 years since we started the very first Black Tech Saturdays.
It's your anniversary tomorrow. Congratulations.
Thank you. And Black Tech Saturdays has grown. In the beginning, we were a small group of tech founders kind of holding together for warmth, and then we opened it up and we saw that Detroit let us know it wasn't a few of us, it was a lot of us. And we grew from 5 people meeting in coffee shops and conference rooms to date, we've had over 25,000 people come out. We've been now to Baltimore, New York, Florida, Texas, DC, and it's been a really amazing journey. We've seen so many of our friends and just favorite people win grants and win opportunities, and people get jobs. And it's been fun to just see Detroit come alive. And I'm so excited to be following the MOCAD interview because I'm really excited. The intersection of art and technology is a lot of what this is birthed out of.
And that's why you were one of the first people I said, let's call Johnny, because I know this is exactly something that Johnny would be perfect to talk to, and is about the intersection of technology and creativity and how Black Tech Saturdays has been able to step into these creative spaces using technology. You said you started with 5 folks at a coffee shop to now interacting with over 25,000 people in 2 years. tomorrow. And it's wild. So let's just talk about that path and that journey there and the way that it has manifested itself today.
Yeah, I think this is a fun conversation because when you think about that intersection of art and technology, it's a lot about how you express yourselves. And I think Black Tech Saturdays is a marriage of how Alexa and I express ourselves. I'm really deep into community organizing. I can be process heavy, and Alexa just knows how to love people, and she knows what looks good. And we've watched as this community has given the space for other people to come and express themselves. And I think technology, since it's just repeatable human behaviors like put to scale, you need a lot of creativity if you're going to make tech. Like, a lot of us can use tech, but to make something, you have to be an artist. And the founders and entrepreneurs and even the professionals who come to Black Tech Saturdays, they're often more on the creative side. They're making something, they're envisioning something. And we've been able to play a small part in so many journeys, but it's that collective kind of all of us dreaming out loud that's really pushed things forward and kind of changed the narrative for Detroit and tech.
And I love what you just said there, because like you said, to create some of the things that you all are creating within the tech space or tech industry, it takes creative processes and creative thinking. And oftentimes when we get this image of the tech world, it's pretty...
It doesn't feel creative.
No.
It seems very exclusive.
Yes.
Like it's a small club, and you understand that's big tech. That's when tech gets to a different place of scale. But if you really look at like your favorite tech companies in their grittiest of days, it was kind of like all the old Apple movies where it was a little bit of the different people gathered together to say, hey, what if we did this thing? People who are deep into tech, you're disrupting. You're really going against the grain. And what Detroit is really good for, because we're so gritty and resilient, is we just disrupt. We're going to create, and we're going to make a new lane and make a new lane. That's why we're so fashionable. I mean, this past weekend we had the Barristers Ball, and we literally had Detroit's own Met Gala right here. And it's like, where else would you see something so beautiful, so big, so stylish?
When I saw the pictures of that ball, I said, my gosh, number one, I got to get tickets for next year's. I got to be present for next year's. But number two, like you said, just the beauty that Detroit's able to manifest within itself, whether it's the clothes, whether it's the way that we walk down the street, whether it's the music we listen to, no matter what it is, Detroit has its own special flair, and it kicks the doors in on any lane that it wants to be in. So I do want to talk about, though, Black Tech Saturdays,
yes,
and the industry itself and the spaces that we've been able to create and carve out. I do want to talk about any standards or roadblocks that you all see, especially as we see the tech field opening up and expanding a little bit more. What are some of those roadblocks that are still in the way, and how can Black Tech Saturdays help shift that narrative?
Yeah, so one of them I think we know is it's always going to come back to access and capital. We either don't have access to the rooms, the spaces, we don't know what's happening, we don't know where the dollars are being dispersed from. It's access. And once you start to get access, we've seen very quickly in adding a few people to a different rooms, I'm like, oh, things can actually spin up a little bit quicker. And then it's capital. We understand that Detroiters are very creative. We create like no one else. We have a hustle that's there. We're not invested in. We have a gap. We know we need to add more dollars to allow for people to have that ability for someone to just say yes and give space to the grace that it's just a pilot. You never know if it's going to be a thing. Think back to 2 years ago when the Song Foundation very first said, we're going to support you. Did anyone think Black Tech Saturdays we would be here? Even when we drew up the plans, we wrote it with an end date of December 2023. We're like, it's a pilot. We'll figure out what happens. And it came from us just having to create, having to try, and that's what we kind of get to manifest. So I think tackling those two things are things that we're going to be deeply focused on. We're currently on Black Tech Saturday spring break, so we'll be back here on May 17th for our big return, and we're going to be adding not only more of what we've done well, I think people love us for, but creating some more intimate spaces for people to have new access to rooms, to have a space to kind of get their feet underneath them and build with different people. You've seen some of our kind of pop-up workshops that have been happening, and there'll be more of those, as well as engaging some of our different partners we met from around the country to have new things here. We have an accelerator from San Diego called the Transparent Collective. May 26th through May 31st, they're going to run their first ever accelerator outside of Silicon Valley. They're bringing it to Detroit. And that's huge. It's run by a Black founder who runs a fund called Black Operator Ventures, who has actually helped 3 of Michigan's founders raise over $1 million with, I think collectively they've all raised almost $20 million. And so like James has been not only helpful to founders here, but over his like 8-9 year track record, he's helped founders raise over $232 million. So things like that are coming here.
That's an amazing stat, an amazing feat, because once again, Silicon Valley seems out of reach for so many folks. Yes. It just seems like it's just like you kind of got to know people to get in, and you got to be super smart or super this or super that. And here Detroit is starting to really make a name for itself.
Exactly.
We're talking about the Black tech ecosystem here in the city of Detroit. I'm Tia Graham. Our guest is Johnny Turnage, co-founder of Black Tech Saturdays. I get super excited when I'm talking tech and anything that's scientific. So right about now, you do have tons of things that are happening with Black Tech Saturdays. You talked a little bit about events that you have coming up. I do want to talk about the Creative Outlet Competition that is accepting entries through the end of May. What is that competition and why is it so important?
So one thing we always admit at Black Tech Saturdays, everything's a pilot. Last year we had a chance to pilot a short creator competition, and we did it coming back from our spring break, and we said this year we should do it again. And so on May 17th, creators will have an opportunity to make their own creative video or content about Black Tech Saturdays. We have 3 different cash prizes. First place is $1,500, second place is $1,000, third place is a $500 People's Choice. Everyone who wins will be offered a contract to do a video for us in September at our Digital Empowerment Summit. And then every creative who enters will be added to the Black Tech Saturdays kind of creative vendor list for future opportunities with us, but also to be shared with entrepreneurs. We get a lot of inbounds from entrepreneurs who have like very quick turnaround times on different creative projects, and we've always wanted to make it easier to get those people connected. And so this will be a really fun time. The judges are Chris Kyle. I think a lot of us already know him. Yes. Josh Landon from Fox 2 News, Leah Hill, founder of Kindred, Autumn Evans from Rocket Community Fund, and Brandy Brown from Gilbert Family Foundation. And so this will be a pretty exciting competition. Last year we had over 60 entries, and we're looking forward to just fostering it and letting everyone kind of show the world what Detroit looks like.
I love it. And before I do let you go and get out of here, I just got this 30 seconds or less, but I want to talk about the philosophy that you all teach at Black Tech Saturdays. We hear about what happens with Elon Musk and his company and some of the other larger companies. Can we just talk about your values here? 30 seconds. We got values.
30 seconds. Look, values. One of the big things is you value community. You should always be learning. And entrepreneurship is a very peer-to-peer personal growth journey. So you have to be around other people who are going through the same challenges as you, so you guys can grow together, and you'll see a lot of change very quickly.
Johnny Turnage is a co-founder of Black Tech Saturdays. There are a list of free events that are happening through the summer. Johnny, what's the website?
blacktechsaturdays.com.
Yes. Johnny, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro. Congratulations on 2 years tomorrow.
Thank you for having me.
From the WDET newsroom, new state House bills would ban utility companies from donating to political candidates in Michigan. Supporters say utilities have too much influence over lawmakers, and the companies say campaign contributions do not come from the rates customers pay. Coming up, Detroit City Council member Gabriela Santiago Romero is not on the August primary ballot because of a clerical error. She says it's the fault of the city of Detroit. Wayne County says the blame lies with the city council member herself. We'll try to find out what is true in just about 7 minutes or so. You all stay right there for the Metro. We will be right back. This is WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.